Hello, Jenny, and welcome to today's episode of Conversations with Tamika. I'm so excited for today's episode and to have you on as a guest. Can you go ahead and share with our listeners a little bit about yourself?
So my name is Jennie Senapatiratne, and I'm very excited to be here, by the way. I do a ministry with my husband called Christ Connection, and we travel around and teach people about prayer. And about a year ago, my life completely flipped, like most people's, right? Most of us kind of our whole life flipped upside down. And I started Real Life with Jennie, the podcast, and I started writing a book. And I think just got really excited about it, and now it's published, and so that's why I'm here. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk to you about your book and to learn a lot more about you. I actually did not know about your ministry, so that is so amazing. And it is so important to teach people about prayer. So let's go ahead and jump into talking about your book titled The Unnamed Zookeeper. I actually have a copy of it right here, and I was so excited to read it. I, recently was able to read through it, and I want you to go ahead and share with us a little bit about where you came up with this title, The Unnamed Zookeeper.
Well, it was my fifth title. But I really felt like it talks about Noah and how Noah's wife is never mentioned in the Bible. And I feel like a lot of times in life, we're never mentioned. We are a background player in someone else's big story, is how we feel. And I have been a pastor's wife for 24 years and have felt like I have spent a lot of time on the pew and nobody sees me, except when I do something wrong. Then everybody notices me. So I really wanted the book to embody that even if you're behind the scenes person, that God's got a plan. Right. And so that's really my heart for it, is the unnamed zookeeper. She's not named, but she really helped change the entire world. Yes. And so that is why I chose that title. And it's kind of cool. I kind of like it. So.
Yeah, I really found myself intrigued by the title. It's a very unique title. I really, really enjoyed it. So thank you for sharing about your vision behind the title and a little bit about your book. So when you were writing your book and in the writing process, what was like the vision that you had for those who are reading it?
I really wanted people to see themselves in the stories. I wanted to recreate the stories in a new way. I felt like we have all heard the Bible stories 1,000 times, right? And we kind of only jump to the end of their stories. Right. So I really wanted to shake things up a little bit, not enough that people would get irritated, because you don't mess with the Bible. You don't rewrite the Bible. That's not a good plan. Right. But I really wanted people to see it from a fresh perspective. These women, because that's what I talk about in this book, is all women. It just happened to like end up being that way. I had some men and they just didn't fit. I was like, those don't fit. But these women, they didn't know the end of their stories. And often in life for us, we don't know the end of our stories either. You know, we can be so bogged down by the details and the crisis and all these things that are happening, that I really wanted people to see that God's got a plan, that what you're going through is bigger than right now. And that was really my heart when I was writing it. I just wanted people to see that when Eve got kicked out of the Garden of Eden and her whole life was completely flipped upside down, there was a purpose for that. Right. There was something that good came out of it, and good can come out of what happens in our lives too. She didn't know the end of that story. She doesn't know how I'm super grateful for her, because I'm not the one that messed up. She doesn't know she didn't get to see the end of all that, and we don't always either. So that was really my heart, is that people could look at the Bible stories and even dig deeper. Right. I don't go super theological. I don't really get super deep with them, right. Because I want you to get excited about that woman. I want you to go, I want to learn more about this. What else does the Bible have to say about this? What are other people saying about it? Dig deeper into their stories. Yeah. So that was really my heart.
Right. And I actually really loved one of your chapters in the book entitled Salty Ones. And when you were talking about Lot, Lot's wife, and her disappearing into a pillar of salt because she turned around. And I really loved it because you used a woman in the Bible that's not, we don't talk about her very much. You know, she has a very, very short story within the Bible. We often skip over it. And it's just such a beautiful reminder that, you know, even no matter how big or how small we may think things in our life are, God is still in control. And even in the midst of her being such a small Bible character, we can learn so much from her story. So I really love that the way that you did that within the chapters of this book. Now let's talk a little bit about you had your daughter actually write some of your book. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, I was trying to come up with unique characters. And so I was brainstorming and we were going on walks because at that point it was the beginning of lockdown where I live.
Right.
And we weren't really allowed to do anything. So we were walking a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And my daughter came up with this idea for this chapter. And she's like, Mom, you should write this. It's amazing. She laid it all out for me. And I went, no, I think you're supposed to write it.
Yeah.
And so she is a budding author. That's what she wants to do with her life. She wants to, sell books to everybody she can find. Mm-hmm. So she was 13 at the time. So as a 13-year-old, I said, go ahead, write a chapter. She made it a female to fit in with the book. And I love the heart of that chapter. I love that it is a 13-year-old. It's a different perspective than me.
Right.
It is something that I just love seeing her heart. So I was like, anything I can do to really allow her to have her voice was important to me.
Right.
So she's, now like, oh, now what am I going to write next, Mom? So, but it was really fun to have her part of it. And she got to be part of the editing process, which I was really nervous about because I didn't do well with the editing process. She did great. Right. Like she was like, oh, that's really wise. And was really an adult about it. And that's such a huge piece as a mom.
Yeah.
You want to see your kids grow, but you want it to be in a safe way. And this was not a safe way. Like, let's put out a book and, see how it goes. It's my first book and her first ever. So it was kind of a scary process, but it was really fun to do together because she is excited about what God's doing. And I think that was really fun to just get her going, you know what, Christian writing is okay. That's kind of fun. It doesn't have to be a, cool teen book. It can be something about God and really make an impact.
Yeah. And I think it's so amazing that she started even at the age of 13. That is definitely a testament to the example that you have on her life, the way that she is letting the Lord impact her even in her teenage years. So that's amazing. I really hope that she, continues with the writing and sharing, parts of her story and sharing how the Lord speaks to her. And it's important to have those young voices out there also. So go ahead and talk to us a little bit about what was your writing process like?
Woo. I spent a lot of time studying each lady. That was my favorite part because I've been a Christian all my life. And I've heard the Bible stories all my life from 100 different people. And I've never dug into the women.
Right.
There's all these minor characters all over the Bible and we just skim right over them. Like Rahab, she's my favorite character of all time. I think, she's my favorite. I maybe the prostitute shouldn't be my favorite, but she is. And I think because it's this big process of like, they're taking on Jericho and they waited 40 years to do this. Right. And she's a minor character. So to be able to dig into them. So I did a lot of research and read a lot of things other than the Bible, just to kind of figure out like what was actually happening at that time. And, it's a very different time at the beginning of the Bible than it is in the New Testament and how culturally things are different. And then I sat down and wrote. And the first draft is never the same as the final outcome. Yeah. Right. It's never the same. And so I just really prayerfully put a little bit of myself in each one. And that was my hardest part.
Yeah.
is I didn't want it to be put anything personal in. I really wanted it to be about the Bible, but I really felt like you need to understand that it's not just back then, it's also now.
Yeah.
And that's why I made it a little more about my life too, in comparison of what I've learned and the things I've done, because we need to understand that the Bible wasn't just Bible times, it's now.
Right.
And so that is really where I went with the writing process. I sat down every day.
Yeah.
For 6 months, every single day I sat down and I just wrote and I studied, and it was honestly the best thing I've ever done. It's my favorite thing I've ever done. And I've done some really great things.
Yeah.
I've done some really fun, wonderful things in ministry, and this was my favorite. I really loved it. So
Yeah. I love that you said that you actually took the time to study it, because some people will just go and write, things just out of what they think they know or what they, somebody told them. But you
right.
took the time to actually study these characters, which shows how important this book and getting the message across was to you, so that you can get that across to your readers. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about going through tough seasons. So, have you had a hard season that you have endured? That maybe one of these stories within this book related to you?
Most of them did, first of all, but one of the ones, like I said, Rahab. I feel like her story is such a story that we just go over. Like, she got rescued, woot, and it was kind of the end of her faith story, and it really wasn't. And for me, I went through infertility for 10 years before we had my daughter. We were married for 10 years. And I remember the days that I came home crying from church because someone else got pregnant.
Yeah.
I got married at 20 years old, which is very young. And that's when you're supposed to have babies. Like, all my friends started like having 5 or 6, and I really, really struggled. It was a very difficult time. I remember at that point in my life, I was living with infertility, and I also had a thing called fibromyalgia. And fibromyalgia is not gone now, but it is much lessened because now we have a lot more information about fibromyalgia.
Right.
And so I was really lonely, and God met me where I was. And I remember the struggle of wanting to just have God step in and do a miracle.
Right.
And where are you, God? Like, this other lady just got pregnant. I'm not even sure she was even with her husband. Her husband probably winked at her across the room.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it felt. It felt like people were like, and then they were pregnant. And I was like, how is this happening? Like, I'm doing the ovulation charts, and I'm seeing people, and I just feel like I'm pulling up my hair, and like, God, where are you? I could be a good mom. I really know I could be, Lord.
Yeah.
And it was always a sense of rejection for me. And the Lord gave me a daughter, and it's in the stories in the book. And he gave me a daughter, but that was not when my story ended.
Right.
My story continued because I haven't had another one. I've had several miscarriages since then, since my daughter. And we so often look at other people's lives and go, well, they're perfect.
Right.
They've got everything together.
Right.
And we just see the little tied up bow of, oh, look, she got a baby. She's happy now. Not going, oh, she's still struggling, because that was supposed to be the beginning of my story, right? I thought, you have one baby, you break through infertility a lot of times, then you have like 6.
Right.
Any of my friends that had babies that were struggling with infertility end up having big families.
Right.
And that was not God's call for my life. That was not. And it's honestly something I still struggle with, even though mine's 14 and I don't want to start over.
Right.
Little too old for that now. But I think that for Rahab, that was her life.
Right.
Like, she was rescued, but she still had to fit in. She had to change everything she believed in. Nothing was easy for her after that. And I can't even imagine. And we so often go, look at that check she was mentioned in the Bible. She's awesome. And we don't see the real struggle after the miracle happens. Right? After the rescue, we go, well, now everything's fine. And I think so often as women and as men, we just kind of step aside and go,
Right.
Their miracle was done. And I think we can believe in more miracles.
Yeah.
I think we can believe that God can do more than the one.
Right.
He's not limited to one in your life.
No, he's not.
And God can give you faith and help you through that. Because I didn't get another one. I've prayed and wished and hoped and prayed and cried out to God for more. And, because I'm like, I don't want her to be an only. Onlys aren't, there's such judgment on onlys.
Right.
And for moms of onlys, there's so much judgment there. And I was
Right.
like, Lord, it'd be so much easier if you.
Yeah.
And now we have a 14-year-old, and I go, Lord, you knew.
Right.
You knew.
Right.
Because with COVID hitting and everything shutting down, and now we're homeschooling, and we have a ministry that we travel every weekend to a different church. We have one kid. God knew.
Right.
God knew what I needed. God knew what she needed. But it's hard to remember that as you walk through it sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you being open and sharing that with such transparency. It's really hard to, share our story sometimes, but thank you so much for sharing. And I know that your story will really, really encourage somebody who may be walking through a season of infertility or have experienced a miscarriage and wondering and doubting God, because you shared some realistic feelings that, sometimes we question God, why is this all that I have? And we don't see the end of our story from the beginning. But like you said, you are still walking through it. You are still learning from it, and it's always a continual life lesson. So thank you so much for sharing that. And then I want to ask that if you could share for our listeners who may be walking through a hard season, who may be walking through a season similar to yours, where they're starting to doubt God and wondering, God, why is this all that I have? Why don't I have what I'm praying for? What kind of encouragement would you give to those people who are walking through a hard season?
I think my biggest thing is have faith. And I know that seems like, oh, have faith, pray. But for faith, for me, isn't the what other people it is. Faith is knowing that God loves me.
Mm-hmm.
Faith is knowing his love and knowing that he's got a better plan. It is not about the current circumstances in life.
Right.
God's got a bigger plan than what we have beyond right now. And believing that his love for me and the promises in the Bible are to give me a future and a hope. And that's his love.
Yeah.
And when you can cozy up to the Lord in a way that you understand his love, it makes knowing and having faith in that this is bigger than what I'm in right now, it makes it easier. It's not always easy. You're going to have your days that you're going to yell and you're going to scream and you're going to be like, God, but God can handle it because he loves you. And I think that's really, really important. And whoever's out there right now, I want you to know God can handle your true emotions because he loves you. He's got the perfect love. And we don't have to be perfect to be with him. He loves us for who we are. He loves us for our emotions. He loves us for all the crazy things going on. And he's got a plan because he loves us. And it says that over and over and over in the Bible. If you look up a plan, even on Google, I do it all the time. I'm like, God's plan for me. And you can see all the scriptures that he promises. I've got plans for you, and I've got a hope for you, and I love you, and I knew you in your mother's womb. When you can start seeing God's true love for you,
Yes.
you can really walk through it with him.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I believe that it is so important for us to know that no matter where we are right now in our story, that God sees us, God knows us, and God loves us.
Oh,
So I
yes.
think that's so important. Thank you so much for sharing, Jeannie. And I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today. I really enjoyed diving into your book, The Unnamed Zookeeper. And I will be so excited to share it with our listeners so that they can grab a copy of your book. Would you like to give one final word of encouragement to our listeners before we close out today?
I just want you to say, keep going. Keep going. Don't give up where you are. Know that there's something better out there.
Yeah.
God's got a bigger plan.
Yeah.
He does. He has a bigger plan than where you are right now. You do not see the plans he's got around the corner. So keep going.
Amen. Thank you so much, Jeannie. And we want to thank you for coming on. Again, thank you for listening to today's episode of Conversations with Tamika. Again, I am your host, Tamika Mahomes, and we'll see you next time. God bless.